Exploring theology, doctrine, and all of the fascinating subjects in between, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, Dead Men Walking starts
now.
Oh, it's not undisclosed today. What's going on, everyone? We're live from Fight Laugh Feast in Knoxville, Tennessee. Here with my buddies Jordan and David. Just met them earlier yesterday, and they've got a very interesting company that we want to talk about, and obviously about in general. But first, thanks for listening to another episode of Dead Men Walking Podcast. You can find us at dmwpodcast.com. You can check out the merch, support the show, always leave criticism, always leave feedback and reviews. We appreciate it. Guys, what's up? How's the Fight Laugh Feast conference going for you?
It's going great. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
It's been really enjoyable so far.
All right, so don't get tame on me now, because we had a lively discussion about crypto yesterday, and the passion that you guys came with. I was like, I think they're going to blow my mics if I let them on this podcast. Tell everyone what the name of your business is and what you guys are about.
So we are a part of Thank God for Bitcoin. Thank God for Bitcoin was a book. Jordan was an author of the book, and now we're turning it into a media company, and the book's just the start of us sort of convincing people like you that Bitcoin's better money.
Okay, so the sign grabs everyone. Everyone that walks by your booth here.
We paid a little extra to be like the first one you could see.
We
when
did
you were
not.
walking.
That's why we couldn't believe we were there.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you come in, there's this huge sign that says "Thank God for Bitcoin," and everyone goes, "What the heck does that mean?"
Did I walk into the wrong conference?
Right. So what does it mean? Why are we thanking God for Bitcoin?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, when it comes to why we named it this, basically we do thank God for Bitcoin. We, again, in the same way as we are called to be grateful for everything, to not thank God for Bitcoin if it's something good would be sinful and wrong.
Exactly.
And so, again, having been in Bitcoin and understanding why it exists and what it does, we're thankful for it. And so, obviously, it's somewhat tongue-in-cheek, and for people, we understand how it's tongue-in-cheek for people who don't have any awareness of it, or maybe a limited cultural awareness of it. But our hope is to help people understand what it is and why it exists, and why Christians especially should care.
Yeah,
and that's even something that we've talked about. Like, man, we wouldn't like the name "Thank God for Bitcoin." Like, we don't. But the beauty of it is that, like, for people who don't understand Bitcoin, it is intentionally like, whoa, what is this? And then we get to kind of have that opportunity to explain. No, it is a good gift, and so we should thank God for it. No,
I absolutely understand that with the podcast here. People go, "Dead men walking? What does that mean?" I'm like, Ephesians 1, baby.
Yes, exactly.
We're dead in our trespasses. Then you get a little sermon in there too while explaining it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I mean, digital currency. I mean, isn't that like the mark of the beast, dude? Like, what's going on? We can't be Christians and support digital currency, can we? What's good about Bitcoin?
That's a great question, and so it's funny because
our audience knows I'm being facetious
Yes,
about
of
the mark of
course.
the beast. Okay, just to let you know.
So something that we've even wrestled with. So this is our first Christian conference, right?
Okay.
And so we've done Bitcoin conferences. Now here we are at a Christian conference trying to figure out, hey, what is our pitch? Like, when people ask us that, like, how do we even actually make this pitch better? And one of the things I've been formulating in my head is similar to the gospel. It starts with the problem, right?
Yeah.
And for a lot of people especially at a conference like this, they would agree that something's broken with our money. They would agree that government-backed money is dangerous, right?
Yeah.
For people who hate us to be in control of the money supply, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And so the problem is the money's broken. The problem is the money is run by people who are evil. We all can agree on that.
Yeah.
Well, what I would encourage is as a Christian who thinks deeply about things, then you should care about finding the solution.
Yeah.
And so if we can kind of start there, then we're all on level playing field of, okay, there is a problem, we need a solution. Okay, so now, what is that solution, right? So we would put forth Bitcoin, and I would say to you, hey, maybe you don't agree, go find something else. The problem is you're always going to end up at Bitcoin. Because once you start to ask that question of, okay, we need better money, then you're going to say, well, what is money?
Yeah.
What really is it, right?
Yeah.
And once you sort of step out of the system enough to ask that question, and you start to look at what properties money actually has and needs, right? Yeah, you're going to end up probably talking about gold, right?
Right.
Which has all these other issues.
What about those people that say, well, man, we need to go back to the gold standard, right? Like, I'm a big end the Fed guy.
Yeah.
Go back to the gold standard. I don't want this hippy-dippy digital currency that I carry around in my pocket. What would you say to people who are like, hey, we need gold, man. We need silver.
The first thing we would say is, you're right. We do want to end the Fed too. And so, again, like, we look at gold bugs and people who, again, they want the right thing. And so we look at, again, it's like that meme from Star Trek where it's like, are you two friends? And the one guy says no and the other one says yes. The Bitcoiners are saying, yes, we're friends with the gold bugs. The gold bugs
you guys
no,
are like
we're not
Baptists and Presbyterians. Okay, I get it now. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes. Wonderful. So again, gold is great in a lot of ways. Okay.
Yeah.
But gold, there's a couple things. Number one, the gold market has been co-opted by the futures market. Then like governments can basically sit on the price of gold and suppress it. The other thing is gold, because of its physicality, the thing that to a lot of people it's a positive is it ends up being a negative. So again, gold is physical, it's heavy, gold is expensive, so generally like large.
We have to mine it, ship it, guard it, right? There's
100%.
expenses
So you
associated with it.
It lends itself towards centralization. You want to put it in a safe place. Most people don't have a safe place for themselves, so they trust guys with guns, thick walls, tall walls.
Sure.
And so it just doesn't it's not going to help my Venezuelan friends who are
Across the border, yeah.
Across the border. It's not going to help my brothers and sisters in Africa who don't have any of that infrastructure. So effectively, gold is it's difficult and a non-starter to use for small priced items.
Yeah.
And then if you turn to something like silver, it's not as scarce. Silver's just not as scarce.
And I would just jump in to say, part of it is gold has deficiencies, right?
Okay.
The market has found those deficiencies and profited from those deficiencies, right? By making it's difficult to own, so now we have vaults, all these deficiencies. Bitcoin has the same positives as gold without those deficiencies.
Okay.
And so the ability for it to be co-opted doesn't exist like it does in gold, right?
Yep.
Right.
So yes, is it possible for gold to overcome some of those challenges? Possibly, but it's still going to have that fundamental deficiency, which is there's a famous Bitcoiner, Michael Saylor, who says this idea of gold holds value over time, really well, not over space.
Yeah.
Right? Traveling with it, carrying it places, protecting it is very difficult. Bitcoin is able to travel well over time, so it's able to hold its value over time really well, and over space, right? Because it's so easy to take actual control of it.
Well, we were talking just about how it can be beneficial in developing countries too.
Absolutely.
You have someone who needs to come to another country or move geographically.
Yep.
They don't have the means to pack up all their stuff, their cows, their farm, they're actually, you were saying, selling all their possessions, converting it to Bitcoin.
Or at least that's a possibility. There are people who are doing that. So full stop.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But the reality, so I've been, for the last 7 years, I've been a pastor and church planner of a Reformed Baptist church in Uruguay. And so we went there with the intention of ministering to a population it's constituted largely of atheists who deal with suicide and depression and just don't see how is God relevant to my life.
Okay.
So we went there thinking we were going to minister to them. We get there, and there's tens of thousands of Venezuelan refugees pouring into Uruguay, trying to find jobs to work to be able to send money back home to Venezuela because their currency is worthless because their government hyperinflated it.
Yeah.
And so again,
sounds familiar.
Yeah, 100%.
We're getting there, brother.
I've seen the future. So again, the issue here is there are people doing exactly what you described.
Okay.
But with Bitcoin, the possibility exists for you to sell your things that you have that are valuable, buy Bitcoin with those things, and then you can cross any border in the world with a 12 or 24 word passphrase memorized in your head or written down somewhere. You can hide, written information way easier than you can hide a bar of gold or several ounces of gold. They're crossing these very dangerous things. You don't have to have any outward indicator that you have anything of value, and you can go to wherever you are and start back up, and you've got wealth.
Yeah.
You've got your
Can't be
your money
confiscated either.
No, if it can be, but
I mean, when you're entering into a new geographical area, or country, or who knows, you're trying to carry a bunch of silver or gold or even money.
It can be confiscated if you do it wrong.
Yes.
Right?
But
like you see on the news, people are like, I thought Bitcoin wasn't hackable. Some guy he's a criminal. He just got his Bitcoin stolen from the feds. Yeah, because they took his phone and his Bitcoin was on his phone and he didn't store it properly, right?
Right.
But that's not a deficiency in Bitcoin. So most of the time people are interacting with some deficiency that they see. There's really, again, this is the interesting part about Bitcoin. Bitcoin, it isn't like the bank. If someone steals your credit card and spends it, you're going to call the bank up and you're like, yeah, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I let someone steal my credit card.
Yeah.
And the bank's going to say, don't worry about it. So you're not self-sovereign. Right? You're going to trust the bank to give you your money back. With Bitcoin, there is no Mr. Bitcoin that you can call if someone steals your Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
So it does require a level of you have to be an adult and you have to kind of take this initiative, which is different than the culture we're used to when it comes to banking. So it's this double-edged sword in the sense of it gives people the access that they didn't have otherwise have, but now they have the access.
Right.
Without that trusted third party. So it kind of even changes the dynamics of how we interact with money, how we interact with people. Because there's not that every deal doesn't have a third party in it now.
Right.
Right now, you and
Just
I
direct.
can do business together, but that creates a whole nother world, which has a lot of positives, but has things that we need to be mindful of as well.
So do you think that's what scares centralized banks in banking when you have a currency like this that's decentralized? Because I got to assume you guys aren't for all digital currencies, right? There's
No.
some out there that are
There are still
like, what are some ones to stay away from if
100%.
someone's listening?
all of them that aren't
there are
Bitcoin.
centralized. There are centralized digital currencies. Like,
Okay.
So you don't want the. So whether they're privately created, in the case of other currencies like the currencies that your audience might have heard of, Ethereum, Dogecoin, all these things. These are privately created, but they're still centrally controlled currencies.
Right.
There's small groups of people who control the decision making of those organizations, and so all the government or a government has to do is go get those few people, line them, get them in a room, and then basically they can threaten them and do whatever,
Sure.
and convince them to change the protocol. Whereas Bitcoin can't be dealt with on that same level. And so again, on the other hand, you have government currencies. So you have government central bank digital currencies. This is
Right,
what-
they're
what
proposing
China
that
has,
right now, yeah,
What
in
China
America.
has, where they can literally say, "Oh, you used your credit card to go to Fight Laugh Feast. You're cut off from the banking system, or you're cut off from PayPal, or whatever."
Well, that's a real thing that's happening
Yeah,
in other
100%.
countries. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And so the test case, and one of the value, I was waiting for something like this. I didn't want it to happen, but I was waiting for it to happen, was what happened to the Canadian truckers,
Yep.
which was, they had this thing, people wanted to support them, a bunch of people from the United States send them dollars, and what does the Canadian government do? They confiscated those dollars
And just gave it to whoever they wanted.
to whoever they want, a horrible charity, like all these, left-leaning, all these things,
Yeah.
charities. And so the only money that they couldn't take and give to all these horrible things was Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, yeah.
They couldn't do it. They said they were going to, and then they realized, oh no, wait, we can't actually do it.
You can't do it.
Because these people, in their case, the people who they had, they were holding their own keys. They were
Yeah.
holding their own, like the Bitcoin was in their possession. They weren't trusting the equivalent of a Bitcoin bank to
Yep.
hold their currency for them. And so, so that's
So-
the difference.
So why do you think, and I'm going to make some assumptions here, but this is just from me talking, is totally personal experience, but if I'm talking to anyone over the age of, let's say, 50, I get immediate pushback on
Yeah,
crypto.
100%.
Immediate. It's
Understood.
not real. It can't be sustained. There's all kinds of issues. I don't trust it. First of all, why is that, do you think? Are they just brought up in an era where they rely on money? And I'm talking to smart people who also want to end the Fed
Yep.
and like gold
Yep.
standards and know that
Yep.
we're in debt and all these things and don't like centralized banking.
Yep.
How do we overcome it at that age group? And I get a lot of pushback from believers, from Christians that just go, like I said earlier, I made a joke, mark of the beast or whatever the reason is, they just don't want to adopt it. They look at it as some type of worldly system, yet they'll gladly use
The dollar.
a
Yeah.
monopoly money,
Yeah.
which is a US
100%.
dollar,
100%.
and make believe that it's worth something.
Yeah.
So how do we overcome that? Is
Well,
that part of your guys'
100%.
path too,
So,
to
yeah, so
educate?
our business exists to help educate, to help Christians understand what it is and why it matters. And so
Okay.
what that practically looks like, and what it's looked like here at this conference, is having a lot of very patient, patient
Yeah.
conversations with people who are coming at you with earnest questions, who have heard things on the internet or heard things online, and so they're trying to sift through, what is this? What do I believe about this? Who, are they telling the truth?
Yeah.
So a lot of it is just patient conversations. Otherwise, obviously, we're creating podcasts, books, all kinds of videos.
And I would say, too, connected to that is, one, we can't ignore the fact that it is hard. Like,
Yeah.
it's taken me years, and a lot of study to make sense of, just like the scriptures, right? Like, it's not
Sure.
like you just show up and you're like, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Right?
Yeah,
It's
I
like
got it.
as you understand
I know it all,
something,
yeah.
you go deeper and you're like, wow, now there's a whole new world for me to kind of see as I've understood this, specific theological term. And so similar with Bitcoin is, there's definitely levels to understanding it. And so
Yeah.
part of that is asking questions like, do they actually understand the problem? Right? Like, hey, let's
Right.
forget about Bitcoin.
That's a good point.
Maybe Bitcoin isn't the solution. I'll concede that. Let's talk about the problem, because you want to end the Fed, but why? Right?
Yeah.
Like, let's go back and let's talk about gold. Why is it good money? And so then when we can talk about some of those things, then we should understand that Bitcoin is hard for someone who's older, just like the cell phone was hard for them to get behind.
Email.
Right?
Yeah.
Just like
Yeah.
email was hard.
True,
Just like
true, true.
different famous economists who have said, like, well, the internet won't be a thing. And,
Right.
and like all that other stuff, like, people have done that because they just can't see that future. And so part of the way that we can do that is A, make sure that they really understand the problem, and then B, I think helping them interact with Bitcoin in a very small way. Something that we were even talking about before is like, hey, what is for that person who's like, hey, I don't know, but I'm willing to like take a step.
Right.
What's that first step? It's like, hey, get off zero, right? Like,
Right.
Where should I go buy some Bitcoin? And it's like, all right, we have a few partners that we really encourage. Like Swan Bitcoin is one of them. Where it's like, hey, they are a Bitcoin only company. They're good people who run that company.
Okay.
Right? Like, hey, that's where you should go and take a step. Like, buy a little bit and don't sell your house and buy some Bitcoin. Buy $100 worth, right?
Right.
And now start to learn how to interact with it, and then come back and let's take another step, right? Because sometimes it definitely is a longer journey, and we just have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And again, I think one of the best motivators to be interested in learning about something is need.
Sure.
Right? Like you don't. There's things that we don't do until we have to.
Yeah.
And so again, these people in Venezuela and these people in Nigeria, they're not. It's just as hard for them to understand technological things as it is for anybody, and yet they're looking at, all right, in Venezuela, this literally happens. I go to the store in the morning, and prices are this. I go to the store in the afternoon, and they're 100% more expensive.
Yeah. Wow.
And so all of a sudden, you have the gumption. Because there's a need there. You recognize I'm not going to be able to buy the food that I need to feed my family if I keep playing by the rules that are presented to me.
Right.
All of a sudden, you're willing to learn. In the same way that, again, a lot of people who are older have learned to use email, which there's this incredible video of on like the Today Show from like 1994.
Yes, exactly.
And it has Bryant Gumbel
and he's like,
these two women who have been
intranet.
forgotten to history.
What is this?
Yeah, 100%. These two women who have been lost to history, and they basically said, what is this email?
What is this email?
Why do we need that? We have letters, And you're just like, now we look at that 24 years, 26 years later, and we're like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Man, and it's because some of it is just a matter of, the approachability of software designed around these things that make them more accessible. Some of it's just a factor of that. Again, Bitcoin is still only held by less than 5% of people on Earth. And so there's still, Bitcoin's a child still.
Sure.
It's still a child. And so there's still people working to create interfaces with Bitcoin, ways to interact with it that are easily approachable. Now there's a lot of things. The overwhelming majority of people can use the Bitcoin apps and interactions to be able to purchase Bitcoin. They can do those today. And again, we recommend Swan. Swan is I use Swan to buy Bitcoin. One of the things that a lot of people one of the companies that a lot of people know that deals with Bitcoin is called Coinbase.
Yep.
And so what you have to know, again, just like with anything, is what is the incentive structure. We want to know this when it comes to whether it's governments or business. How are we being monitored? How do they make money?
Yeah.
And so whereas Google sells your information, that's how they make money.
Yep.
You're the product.
You're the one for sale when you get that free email. Yeah.
And so with companies like Coinbase who sell thousands of these different cryptocurrencies, what they're doing is they get paid by every single trade that happens, every single transaction that happens, they get 2% of. So they're incentivized to encourage as many transactions as possible.
Right.
And so the more cryptocurrencies that they have, no matter how good, bad, worthless they are, they're getting paid regardless.
Sure.
And so this company, Swan, that is a partner of ours, we recommend them because they only sell Bitcoin. They really believe in Bitcoin, and so they don't.
Right.
They're like, we don't want to make money. They forego hundreds of millions of dollars by not selling all these other cryptocurrencies.
Right.
And so we want to support people who are again, selling products that they actually believe in.
Yep.
And putting the good of their customer above their short-term, ability to make money.
Yeah, so one more objection before we wrap this up here too, because I've heard people say, well, look, at gold, you have to go mine it and get it, and there's like physical labor involved with it.
Yep.
And in crypto, and it's digital. There's no labor or anything behind it, but you would say, no, there is. For every single Bitcoin, there was labor and energy and things put into it, correct?
Something that I talk a lot about when I'm trying to explain Bitcoin to people is the beauty of Bitcoin is that if I were to pull out my phone and send you Bitcoin right now, I know for a fact.
No, go ahead. Let's do it just to make sure it works on the show.
Yeah.
Just go.
Just 10.
$1,000
I just need 10.
10 Bitcoin. Someone mined that Bitcoin.
Right.
And so what is mining? Mining sounds really, really confusing. We're converting the energy, right? Someone is spending capital to have Bitcoin miners, right? Which are computers, which are kind of guessing this number, right?
Yep.
And every 10 minutes kind of Bitcoin is mined, right? But they're expending that capital to get the miners. They're also paying for that energy, right? They're consuming that energy, right? And so we're basically digitizing energy.
Yeah.
We're taking real life energy, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's coal or oil or whatever it is, methane gas, we're taking that hydroelectric. We're converting that real life, kind of something built by God in sort of the way that the world works, right? We're taking that energy and we're digitizing it, right?
Yeah.
And we're not digitizing it into this infinity. We're digitizing it into this 21 million, right? And so we know that when we look at Bitcoin, that someone real life put out that energy, just like gold. That's one of the beauties of gold. That's why, again, trying to go to the crypto conversation, that's why proof of work, the Bitcoin kind of protocol of like mining has to happen, is so valuable, is because we have proof that work was done to get us this. Just like gold has proof of work. When you see gold, you know someone.
It just didn't appear.
Mined that gold, right?
Yeah.
And so that proof of work is so valuable because that actually is that when people say, like, what backs Bitcoin? What's the value behind it? It's that there's that work behind it. Right? That work of securing the network.
Real resources, real energy went into producing this Bitcoin.
Right.
And so again, so you can compare that with gold, and people can be like, well, you know, gold's, again, it's the same exact situation with gold. It looks a little bit different, but it's still the same. You're still having to pay overhead for machines. You're still having to pay overhead for, you know, places to refine the gold. There's places, you know, like there's a lot of similarities there. But the bigger issue, and again, going back to the idea of need, the bigger issue is that while we're sitting here arguing, your money is getting 8.5% more worthless with every month that goes by. This is the
at least.
And even then, those are the
conservative.
best. 100%. Those are the best numbers. Those are not.
Those
real.
are the numbers that they tell you.
Yeah. You know, if you're going out to buy a house, it's way more than 8%.
Sure.
You know, if you're going out to buy, I mean, we talked to a guy who's buying
go buy
sour,
cheese.
Go buy
it's up
sour
30,
cream.
35%.
Sour cream was up like 90%.
Yeah.
And so again, so while you're sitting here arguing, you're wasting time, which you can either be learning about Bitcoin and you could be saving the buying power of your money. So again, you don't want it. There is a sense of urgency. Again, Christians are doing the most important work in the world. If you're making disciples, you care about paying your pastor, you care about supporting missionaries, all these things.
Yeah.
Christians are doing the most important work in the world. And with every month that goes by, the money that they're using, that's given, that they've denied themselves to serve their neighbors and to earn this with, the money is accomplishing less and less with every single month that goes by.
Wow.
And so again, for me, like that affects my Venezuelan neighbors, my Venezuelan brothers and sisters who love the Lord. That affects, you know, people's ability to be there with them.
Yeah.
It affects their ability to preach the gospel to them, encourage them. So these are real life concerns. This isn't just this random thing. This is real life.
Some
there's
fad.
People,
Yeah.
this is some fad. Like there's people who are using these and are enabled to stay on the mission field because of Bitcoin.
Wow. So let's wrap this up in just a few minutes. Where do we, like, realistically, as guys who are in this, where do we see Bitcoin in the next 5, 10, 20 years? If you're looking and trying to really project and go, where is this going? Are we going to be walking around on our phones with Bitcoin and having it as a competing centralized digital currency, or what do you think?
And I think Jordan will agree with me. We're not even necessarily let's not even talk price, right? Because who cares what the price is? But what I can tell you is this.
Because we didn't touch on this, but it can also be divisible.
Yes.
Bitcoin. It's not like I have to have 60 grand to buy a couple Bitcoin.
Buy a few dollars worth
of Okay. Go ahead, sorry.
So where do I think it's going to be? I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner, right?
Yeah.
I think, and you are as well, right?
Yes.
You have this podcast. I think there will start coming more and more every year, right? Let's say 5 years from now.
Yeah.
When someone says, how much does that cost? You might start to think in more than just the dollar.
Right. You might say,
well, do I want to sell this thing? Do I want to give up my time for some dollars?
Right.
Well, I take dollars, right?
Yeah.
And that's inflated up to 10x what it was a few years back.
But I'd prefer.
But I would also take Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right? I might also name something else, right?
Right.
But what that's introducing is there's this loss of confidence in my ability to price things in the dollar.
Yeah.
Right? And so over the next 5 years, 10 years, will Bitcoin be the only thing we use? No, probably not. But what's happening is it's being the opportunity to save in Bitcoin, the opportunity to transact in Bitcoin is becoming more and more prevalent. Because here's the reality. This is a parting line that I'll say. The linchpin for me in kind of converting everything, you're like, okay, I'm all in on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Was the reality that human beings always trend towards the best money.
Yeah.
Because by nature, they don't want to waste their time.
Well, I mean, that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's a pocketable labor or service exchange.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you
exactly.
want the best.
I want the best. I don't want to wake up in 6 months and my time has been devalued.
Right.
I want the best battery for my time.
Right.
Bitcoin is a better battery, and so people will trend towards it. And so that trend will just continue to grow.
All right, guys, so we got someone out there listening right now, and they're going, this all sounds great. I need to learn more about this. I want to get into it. I'm finally making the plunge. where do they go to talk to you guys? How do they get a hold of your book? Like, what's their next step?
Yep. So our website is tgfb.com.
All right, we'll link that up.
Yep. And then we're on Twitter. I mean, if you look up
Thank God for BTC on
Yep,
Twitter,
Thank God for BTC on
Instagram, Facebook.
Yep.
But
then the
more
book,
importantly,
yeah.
the book.
The book is on Amazon. You can buy it on Amazon.
What's the name of it again?
Thank God for Bitcoin.
Thank God for Bitcoin.
And so again, and then just we have a YouTube channel where we're going to be publishing videos. Again, answering a lot of these kind of questions.
Yeah.
So again, we have there's like an email capture on our website. If you have questions, go there and drop us your email and drop us a line, and we'd be happy to reach out to you. But again, our goal is to provide content that answers these honest questions that people have. We understand it's difficult to understand.
Yeah.
And so we want to kind of be in the gap to help people understand.
All right, guys, thanks so much for stopping by and talking to us.
Hey, it
I'm
was a
sure we'll be
pleasure.
talking in the future. And, guys, thanks for listening to another episode of Dead Men Walking Podcast. We appreciate you visiting dmwpodcast.com, supporting the show. As always, God bless. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Dead Men Walking Podcast for full video podcast episodes and clips, or email us at deadmenwalkingpodcast@gmail.com.
None you